A quick introduction. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Ray Espinoza. He's going to introduce our panelists, and together they are going to discuss the topic of creating next generation cyber awareness programs. Very fitting here for Cyber Awareness Month. But Ray is the CISO at Inspective. With over 20 years in technology and 15 years in information security, Ray is responsible for driving operational security and risk and oversees security service delivery for Inspective's customers. Before Inspective, Ray was the VP of Cloud Security at Medallia. And additionally, he's held VP and CISO roles at Cobalt and security leadership positions at Amazon, Workday, Cisco Systems, and eBay. Ray, we're really excited to have you here as our moderator. I'm going to pass it over to you. You can introduce our speakers and get us started on today's panel.
Great. Thank you very much, Theo. Super excited to be here. Now I have the opportunity to introduce our panelists today, and I'll start with Ava Woods. Ava is the Associate Director and of Global Security Awareness at Raytheon Technologies. She's passionate about helping others understand how to shift and sustain necessary behavioral change to teach a security culture. She's managed security awareness and learning programs across several industries for Cvent, DXC Technology, and Zoom. She's also held data governance, content management, and program awareness and branding positions at Navy Federal Credit Union. Ava, it's great to have you.
Thanks, Ray. I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. And next, I'd like to introduce Dora Ross. Dora is a security culture transformation specialist and an ambitious security culture lead with over 9 years of experience in business change management, communication, IT transformation, and security cultural change. She works with organizations to define and implement risk-based, human-centered security culture and training strategies, enabling positive behavioral change. Dora is passionate about information security and helping people to better protect themselves and their organizations from cyber threats. Dora, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you for the great introduction. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Great. Well, let's kick things off. So, Ava, I guess I'll start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role and share a bit about your security awareness program?
Sure. So my role is to really facilitate human risk management, right? I think we've done a good job shifting from this kind of the entertainment crew mentality to one of where we are identifying human risk and finding the best way to manage that through, communications and learning activities. So that's what I bring currently to Raytheon Technologies, and I would say that's what I've brought to the previous organizations. It's that straightforward.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you. Dora, how about you? Can you tell me about the same?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm responsible for embedding secure behaviors into our corporate culture. So I work with all the different functions and departments to create awareness of best practices so that they can protect themselves as well as the organizations from cyber attacks. And so I have got a really comprehensive awareness program, and that includes the sort of usual communication style, pull and push elements. And I'll try to bring in some innovation and creativity in terms of the engagement activities that I do. So again, we have got regular blogs, for example, but try to be a little bit different and think outside of the box. So for example, we tested and trialed for gamification, escape rooms, and then really just get the feedback from people to see what's actually working. And then we can set measures and metrics to monitor what actually working, in terms of the training element, and also how it changes behaviors, because that's really the important thing, the behavioral change and reducing risks.
Absolutely. If we're not moving the needle, then what are we doing, right? Checking the box. So many things that I'd like to dive into with the responses or the introductions that you gave, but I'll let it develop here based off some of the questions that we have. So Dora, maybe I'll start here with you. In your opinion, what do you think are the most critical aspects of a security awareness program? I think you touched on a few. It'd be great, if someone were to bring you and say, just give me the absolute basics, that something that this program has to have to be successful, what would that be?
So I would say, break the norm and try and test something else, something new that is engaging for people, and definitely ask for feedback. Find out what works for people. And what other critical elements that I would bring in is personalization. So, for different teams, you need to have bespoke training. You can't have a one-size-fits-all approach. So find out what data people are dealing with in certain departments and create a suitable training for them that is relevant and it is relevant for them. Also, I would say set up champions program. That would be one of the critical elements as well, because, security team, I don't know, different numbers in different companies, but it's not going to be enough to reach everyone within an organization. So champions are like your ally. They are the people who reach out and they are part of the security team. So they're able to create those sort of ripple effect in terms of security culture and awareness. So these are the kind of things I would sort of highlight. And of course, understanding your risk profile so that you can target your training well.
Awesome. Thank you. I know it is interesting. I think I can say at just about every organization I've been a part of, we did not have enough security staff to meet the overall demand of the entire organization. We may have thousands of developers, but maybe like 2 AppSec engineers, and obviously at different companies, it's slightly different overall, but Security Champions program, hugely valuable. And so I'm glad that you touched on that. I may circle back to that because that in itself can likely be a discussion around how do you do Security Champions well? Because I've had some big failures and also some wins, but awesome. Thank you. Ava, what about you? What do you think are the most critical aspects of a security awareness program?
So I think right in alignment with what Dora was saying, it really comes back to being employee centric, right? So you have to start with the person. I think that, we talk about the risks. Well, who are the ones who are the most risky? Who are the ones who are, acting in ways or behaving in ways that are, causing, security incidents, et cetera? You really have to get fine on the who and the what, right? That's the core. And I think that's even something that's missing a lot of times. I think we jump into, okay, here's the textbook awareness and training program. Let's try all the things. But then we forget, wait, we never actually assessed current state. We never actually looked at, right, the employee and what behaviors they have now, what we need to change specifically. And I think, right again with Dora, champions programs are so effective because not only are they force multipliers, they are representatives of the people whose behaviors we're trying to change. So, we all have that bias, right, where we know the information, we know what we're trying to push out, but we don't walk in the shoes of the people whose behaviors we're trying to change. So by building those champions programs, you can, do pulse checks with these guys. You can have them, right, be the voice, right? We learn from behavioral psychology that we're more likely to accept feedback or new ways of doing things if the information comes from a peer, somebody that we trust, right? So there are so many benefits to having a champions program and really nailing the key points that need to be put across. I think
Absolutely.
those are, yeah.
I think it's great. Having somebody else as another voice in the room of, hey, team, have we thought about this? Or maybe there's, a lot of risk with this decision being made. I know just having security champions be a part of even sprint planning or even design discussions where security happened to not be in the room, just having somebody security minded to be able to influence the outcome, I know has been huge. I'm definitely going to circle back on champions because I'd love to hear more about what you both think. But I think this next question really, many of us and probably a lot of folks here on the call have experienced failures or maybe had expectations that were unmet as it tied to security awareness. So Ava, maybe if I stay with you to start, can you tell me why do you think security awareness programs fail to get the outcome that the organizer or the creator means to happen?
So I think it goes back to the end, or to begin with the end in mind. Sometimes we start these programs from a compliance perspective, and that's all the runway we really get, right? we absolutely need this. There's a compliance need for us to push out training or do 12 communications in a year or run a simulation, a phishing simulation program. And when you do that, you put yourself in this box instead of starting with, well, we really want to address the risks. We want to create a workforce that is eager to continue learning, that is thinking about security first and foremost. When I go to create a Word doc, I'm thinking, how do I secure this? Right?
Mhm.
That's where we need to be thinking. And a lot of times, I don't think that happens. So definitely one of the biggest, I think, areas for improvement, within the industry is, starting with that compliance perspective and not the end in mind.
Sure. I know I've definitely used what I call the compliance stick, as a forcing function for organizations to drive security behavior or to get specific tasks done. But many times, as you mentioned, it can put you in a box. The compliance bar is not that high, especially when it comes to education. I mean, we stand in front of our employees, or maybe not even have to really stand in front of them, but educate them once a year. Is that really enough to drive home and educate them and arm them to make the right decisions? Probably not. Can we draw any parallels to you teach somebody once for half an hour, and then they're good to go for the next year to make the best decision possible in maybe complex situations? Awesome. Dora, I would love to hear from you. Why do you think programs have failed, and what have you seen?
So I agree with both of you, definitely, that too much focus sometimes goes on the compliance element. And it's not only not enough once a year, and it could be half an hour to an hour, but it could be boring and not engaging, for people. So it won't stay with people, definitely not for a year. No way. So, too long and not interactive trainings are definitely one of the things that can be a failure for the security awareness programs, but it could be the other side as well, when there is too many topics and too often for people. So it's fair enough, we need to focus on continuous learning, so maybe once a month or even more frequently, depending on the organization and the department, but we can't bombard people with too many topics. So we need to be focused on what are the top risks and what behaviors we can change to sort of mitigate those or help reducing those risks. And I would bring in here as well the personalization. Again, I mentioned this before, but again, this can be a failure because if something is not relevant to the person, it's not going to sink in. If it's not real life examples for their department, what's relevant for the day-to-day dealing with, is not really going to sink in and resonate with the people. And it could be leadership is not priority for the leadership, apart from the tick box ticking exercise. And if the leadership team and team leads, managers are not walking the talk, then again, it's not going to have that credibility and people might not do the training. So I think maybe these are the other elements that could play to the failure of the security awareness program.
Absolutely. Buy-in for continuous training. There's only so many hours in the day, in the week, and there's tons of business deliverables that, you're always competing against, it seems, even though security is almost always in line with positive business outcomes. But I've had to draw and connect those lines for business leaders at organizations before, where I feel like, okay, it's got to be me. It's got to be the words I'm saying, or maybe I approach that's not resonating. So how about tell me what you think so that I can better educate you and help you better tie why this is important to get some buy-in. But I know we're going to talk about buy-in a little bit because that's huge. And that's also been, I think, some of the failures that I have had experience in the past is misaligned expectations from other teams for champions programs, for personalized training, et cetera. Again, time away from delivering what's on somebody's what's on their review and the tasks that need to get done, the responsibilities. Many times I've had to fight tooth and nail at times to get security included on there so that somebody would invest time in there. But again, interesting nonetheless. Both of you have talked about personalization. I would love to kind of dive back into that topic. And Dora, I'd love to stay with you. When I think about personalization, I mean, you've hit on it a bit as far as targeted training from a team perspective. I've done security training for accounting functions. When we had BEC campaigns going out looking for W-9s, looking to come from the CFO, et cetera, and trying to make things very relevant, and vice versa, doing something specific to engineering. When I think of personalization, the first thing that comes to mind is, how do I scale that at an organization, especially when I've been at places like Amazon, like Cisco, and not every place is the same. But as a company gets larger, does it get harder to do personalized training? So Dora, how about you start? Personalization, automation, how do we do that?
Yes, absolutely. So you need to have a great tool, I think. A one-man band and one person is not enough to do and scale up something, for personalized content for all the different departments. So I think it starts with finding out who are the riskiest or high risks functions and departments, and then focus your attention on those education programs. So you can't, unfortunately, you just don't have enough, no company have got enough resources to have per department personalized content unless for many years they're running these programs. So find out who are your riskiest people and functions, and then start with that. But also personalization is, for me, not just it means that it's relevant and relatable for that particular team or department, but also personalized content. So it's different, maybe learning styles. So maybe people like reading or watching videos or live content, to have different style of educational sort of content and collaterals, but also to have the training whenever I want it or whenever the next person wants it. So it's to be available anytime. And I work with global organizations as well, so you can't really have certain set times for trainings unless you're working with a particular team. So having that, you are able to get the training when you want it, when you need it, when you want it, and when you want to learn more, there is more content for you.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. All available on your time scale. It's like why we all use DVRs now. I almost can't remember watching something live outside of sporting events. I want to watch something on a time that's convenient for me. It makes total sense that our education is also available when employees need it as well. Thank you. Ava, what do you think? What do you think personalization on automation? How do we do that?
So I think, again, Dora and I think we're twins. I think the personalization starts with really understanding the audience, understanding whose behavior you're trying to change. That's the only way it's going to be effective. So I think we have to understand, right, who the people are, what they need to know, what needs to actually change for them, and start building programs or building, a capability that can treat that and sustain that, right? And of course, we start small, right? What are our highest areas of risk, and how do we, identify? Okay, here are the people. Here's when they're most active. Here are their learning needs. And for some folks, they might be in a factory, or they might be fully remote. Their learning opportunity is going to look a little different, and then actually creating training, learning for those groups. And again, being very mindful about how they interact with work. So something that Dora brought up about business process, I think that is the ultimate form of personalization, because it goes one step, I think, beyond the effectiveness of training. When you can build security into standard process, you're making things so much easier for the folks in the audience, or your audience members rather. So think about it this way: if somebody is collecting, let's say they've been collecting credit card information over the phone, as they're talking to their clients, and that's a big no-no. We've identified that. Giving them training to say, collecting that information is not good, is a good start, right? But when they're in the process of going through, all right, I'm going to start this call, I'm going to go through my script, I'm going to do this, they're going to forget sometimes. They might, we're forcing them to remember. But if you build into their script or into their process, make sure that you are not capturing this, or stop the recording and then capture the information, that that makes things so much easier, and they start learning just through going through the process. So I think that's an additional way of bringing personalization that is scalable. And I would say that's a piece of change management, right? That if we were doing projects, right, we looked at this all like project, we'd say, okay, how are we going to make people aware that they need to do this new thing? How are we going to give them the tools, the knowledge, right? How are we going to reinforce that? It's the same thing when we're dealing with these risky behaviors, right? How are we going to change that behavior, facilitate, the change, and really sustain that change? So, and we know change management, they always start with who is the audience, what are the special needs, special things about this group. So
Absolutely. Awesome. So building what they need to look out for, the types of behaviors we want into that process. And I think that makes a ton of sense. That leads me into the next question. And Dora, if I can throw it back to you, when I think of changing process, especially when it's the security organization is going to influence change, which we believe is positive for the organization in another team, another department, another org, that requires buy-in. How have you approached getting buy-in from different stakeholders, or maybe even stakeholders who are resistant to seeing the value compared to, the tangible ways that they feel that they do within their own department? Hope you're on mute. I'm sorry.
Here we go. I had my first mute experience in this podcast. Sorry. Yes, by getting buy-in from various different stakeholders. So for senior stakeholders, for example, it's always good, first of all, to understand what are their risks in terms of for the area of the business, and understand what kind of behavioral change we could implement with various different activities that could reduce those risks. So when you're speaking with those senior stakeholders, talking in a language of risks and risk management, that could potentially gain buy-in from them. So that's one kind of way that you can do that. When you're working with maybe learning and development and communication teams, they might just need to have an understanding of what you're doing and why, so they know how they can help and facilitate for their learning and development. And for comms, they're so overwhelmed with so many different things they need to communicate within the organization. So giving them a heads up and working together on the best style and a way of communicating, again, you can get their buy-in. So collaboration, I would say, collaboration and highlighting what's important for that stakeholder could get you buy-in for the security awareness program.
Sure. So making it real for them to things that matter, maybe even using language that's more aligned with how their business reports. I think that makes sense. Ava, what do you think?
So I agree. I definitely think it's important to come forward from a risk perspective. I repeat this over and over again, and I'm going to keep doing it until it sticks, but we're not an entertainment crew, right? We are really here to manage the hardest, right, risks of them all, the ones that you can't just turn on, turn off, right? I think that's really important. And I think it's important to also really understand storytelling and really good stakeholder management. So when you're sitting there and you're looking across your awareness program and you're thinking, how am I going to get buy-in for this? How am I going to get people on board? You have to take time to think about who are the folks who are resistant or will present the most resistance, and what are some strategies that you can employ to help get them at least to a point of neutrality, right? And so the magical thing about awareness programs is there's this amazing ability to touch all of these other areas of the business. So by getting training out to an entire population, you might have to really push some improvements from the learning side, from the LMS side. You might have to push some improvements on the communication side, right? And it's important to make sure that those stakeholders are aware that you're helping them solve other problems in their areas, right? You're not just this sort of contained program. It's you've got arms and you've got the ability to influence their needs in ways maybe they didn't realize. So it's always important to think broader, think bigger. What is the business value that I'm bringing to these different organizations, and also tap into those, right? So it's all about the people, the stakeholder management. That's just such a key piece to all of gaining the buy-in and moving the needle.
Absolutely. I know one of the things that I had learned was in having some of these conversations, I wanted to be really clear on not just that we do the thing, but what does success look like? And how do I make sure you can hold me accountable? And I, in turn, can hold you accountable for the either the resources that you're going to provide or the time provided or whatever that is, and make sure that I can come back with a metric to say, we're successful and fantastic. This is how we continue to improve upon this, or we're just not meeting expectations, or we're not getting the outcome that we expected by investing this time. So here's where I think maybe we fell short. Can we do some course corrections and then continue on? I mean, I've done that with multiple security programs across the organization, and it was really tied to what does success look like? Because very many times, I've had, not to pick on engineering, because I definitely love my engineering leaders out there, but they're like, oh, well, you said you needed a resource and I gave you some resources, and it, didn't matter that it was an intern or a new college grad who didn't have the ability to influence the amount of change that we needed. I did a poor job of aligning what success looked like with the engagement. And so I think that could be also a huge piece as well of, tying it together, helping them understand that it's real and here's why. And that measurement piece of, is this really moving the needle, as you had mentioned. So we have a minute left, and I would love to have each of you say, given any sort of advice to somebody who's just starting new with security awareness program. Obviously, some amazing nuggets that have been shared so far just in the last half hour, and it really did fly by here. What would you tell them? And in 30 seconds or less, this is the best advice that I can give you to build a strong and impactful security program. So Dora, I'll start with you.
So my 30 seconds advice would be to find your top risks and then focus on maximum 3 behaviors initially that would make the biggest difference and impact in terms of reducing those risks.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. Ava, what about you?
I would remember that it's all about the employee and how we can enable them to really exhibit those secure behaviors.
Absolutely. Awesome. And I would lead with measure. Make sure that you're listening. One of the things that I have done is a security NPS. Do our employees feel confident they can apply the skills that we've armed them with? And if they don't, I need to fix my security awareness program. I need to continue to make improvements. So I would say measure. And with that, thank you all. I would like to turn this back over to Theo as we carry on with the event. But Ava, Dora, thank you so much for the time and the discussion today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, fantastic. Ava, Dora, Ray, thank you guys so much. Right in the heart of Cyber Awareness Month, you guys kind of jumped away from everything that I know you have going on to do this. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. That was fantastic content that I know our audience loved. So thank you guys.